Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We have three of our esteemed faculty members here with us to discuss different aspects of our practical learning programs here at Denver Law. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. And David, if you'd like to go ahead and lead us off, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Thank you, May. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is David Schott, and I am one of the professors here on the faculty, along with my two esteemed colleagues, whom you are going to hear from in just a moment. And so I represent the Center for Advocacy. And first, let me start just by saying congratulations to all of you to getting accepted to law school. You know, there's an old adage that says the hardest part of law school is getting in. So you can check that off the list, right? And I'm sure all of us are in the same situation. These are unique times. We're all at home. And I'm in a blazer and a pressed shirt, but I'm actually wearing a bathing suit. No, I'm kidding. You never know. What I'm going to do is I have about 8 minutes that I'm going to give you an overview of the Center for Advocacy and what we do. And I'm actually going to, now share the screen and put up a brief PowerPoint presentation. So the dynamics of your screen, for those of you, you've probably all done these Zoom conferences before, but you will see your screen changing. And I will start this from the beginning. Okay, hopefully all of you can see that. As I said, I'll speak for just a few minutes, and then after my colleagues speak as well, my understanding is we'll open it up for questions. So as I mentioned, my name is David Schott. My email there is on the screen, and I don't expect you to write anything down right now, but this is just to give you an idea of what resources are available to you. You can always get my email off of the Center for Advocacy website as well. The Center for Advocacy, we essentially offer three things. We offer courses, teams, competitive teams that travel around the country, and then also tournaments and events. I am going to boast a little for a moment, but not about me. But recently, in the last few weeks, the Center for Advocacy was ranked number 9 by U.S. News and World Report, number 9 in the country. I know that the clinics have even greater bragging rights than I do, but I won't steal their thunder. We've been in the top 10 for the last 20 years. I'm sorry, the top 10 for 10 years, the top 20. And we're a department that's about 12 or 13 years old. You can see some of the iconic representations I have around there. And yes, Rudolph was the number 9 reindeer. The reason I bring this up, though, is really it has some relevance to you, because I really want to thank all our wonderful Corps of Adjuncts and alumni who help out with our department. As I always say, you as DU law school students, you cannot walk very far without bumping into a judge or an attorney or a mediator who's not a DU law grad. We have a fabulous network of alumni throughout the city, throughout the state, throughout the metropolitan area that can help you with, and I'm sure Professor Freeman will talk more about this, about getting jobs and getting externships and things like that. So I really want to thank them. Some important numbers. Our graduates, approximately 63% of our graduates ultimately end up in litigation or litigation-related jobs. 43% of them end up in court within 24 to 36 months after graduation. Maybe they'll be in a hearing, they'll be in a trial, something of that nature. And 19% of them end up in court immediately after graduation and licensure. So they end up being assistant public defenders or assistant deputy district attorneys. We have students right now, I have third-year law school students who are co-managing dockets for public defenders' offices and district attorneys' offices and things like that. So as you can see, we are very much a professional and application-oriented law school. Let me take a moment and just say, if you're having any stress about law school, the key to law school, in my opinion, is balance. And I mean that academically and socially and physically. But what I mean is when you get to law school, make sure that you continue, if you have a workout regime, continue to engage in that. Make sure that you continue to engage in social activities. And then also academically, make sure you get a balance of theoretical courses and of simulation courses and of application courses and things like that. Please do not pressure yourself into thinking you have to know right now what you want to ultimately do with your law degree. I went to law school to be a tax analyst, and I came out wanting to be a trial attorney. And that's what I did full-time for 20 years. I was a full-throttle trial attorney, and then I came onto the faculty about 12 or 13 years ago. And yes, I know you probably look at me and go, wait a minute, you've been practicing law for 33 years? You must have started when you were 12. You're exactly correct. I was like the Doogie Howser of my law school. Okay. Here is kind of an overview of the way I look at the progression of law school. You sort of start off with indoctrination. You start off with theory-based courses in your first year of law school. You learn the IRAC method, and then you sort of gravitate, and it doesn't necessarily have to be linear like this, but then there are simulation courses, and that's where the Center for Advocacy falls. Our courses and our teams and our tournaments. And then application-oriented education is what I refer to as the clinics and the externships where you're actually working with live clients and interacting with live clients. Simulation, where the Center for Advocacy, we allow you to make mistakes when no one's going to lose their house, no one's going to lose their kids, and no one's going to lose their liberty. In other words, the consequences in simulated courses of making mistakes, it's very benign. I tell my law school students on the first day of the semester, you're going to make 1,000 mistakes in your career in law school. Promise yourself to make the first 100 mistakes in my classroom this semester. Your future clients will love you for that. Because I can tell you that there's no mistake that law school students make in my class that I haven't made in real life, in a real courtroom, in front of a real judge, with a real client sitting next to me. So that's one of the great things about professional education, like we focus on at DU. It's all about learning how to do things and making the mistakes before you actually get into practice. The Center for Advocacy, we are dedicated to professional education. So a lot of the theory that you learn in other courses, particularly in your first year of law school, we apply them. We apply critical thinking, we apply case analysis, applied evidentiary analysis, applied professional writing, and much more. I always like to say that you don't want to end up like this guy and graduate law school and say, hey, I've never operated on a patient, but I've read about it. When I went to law school many decades ago, when I graduated, I had never been in a courtroom. I had never seen a complaint. I had never written a contract. These are all things now that you can learn through simulated learning course in the live environment, in the clinics, and in the externships. Briefly, I'm going to talk about each three, first being the courses. We offer a whole panoply of courses, starting with Trial Practice 1 courses, and then a whole menu of Trial Practice 2 courses, depositions, voir dire, litigation technology, you name it. Then we also have some practice labs, the Day 1 criminal and civil practice labs and the evidence practicum. I know I'm going really fast, folks, and I want to reiterate, I don't expect you to remember any of this. All this information is available on the Center for Advocacy website. But this is just to give you an overview from 10,000 feet, what we sort of do and what we look like. These are the big 5 courses that I encourage students to take before they graduate. Make sure you get a basic courtroom skills, basic trial practice course in. Take one of the practice labs, take advanced evidence practicum. You'll take evidence 101, probably your second year of law school, and then try to take either a depositions or a voir dire course, and then a client counseling or motions practice course. Regarding tournaments, these are available to all students. We have mock trial and moot court tournaments. Mock trial tournaments are trial advocacy tournaments. That's the Summit Cup, the Hoffman Cup, the Advocate Cup, and the Crosstown Cup, and they run throughout the year. And you may be asking, what's the difference between mock trial and moot court? It's a great question. Moot court is, think appellate. You're usually arguing to a panel of judges. Mock trial is when you're in the well of a courtroom and you're generating new evidence through witnesses and exhibits, things like that. Where in moot court, most of the evidence has already been entered, but you're arguing over evidentiary issues now, basically on appeal. Here are some of the moot court tournaments we have: the Nandable, a negotiations and mediation tournament, the client counseling tournament, and much more. Regarding teams fall into the same 2 categories. We have the National Trial Team, which is trial advocacy, and then we have moot court teams. I always say that if there's an area of law that you're interested in learning more about, we probably have a team for it. So you can see under our moot court teams, we have teams for international law, football mediation, baseball arbitration, bankruptcy, environmental, Native American law, space moot court. Whatever area you are possibly interested in, we probably have a team for it. We pay all the expenses, and you are coached by, you will get mentoring and coaching from an alumnus or a faculty member, and you get to travel and compete against other teams. And then finally, so I've talked about all 3. Finally, we have the concentration in litigation and trial advocacy. If you take 24 credits of advocacy courses with a B average or better, then you successfully earn a concentration. If you want to know what those courses are, these are the menus listed on the Center for Advocacy website. The left-hand column is the civil litigation track. The right-hand column is the criminal litigation track, and it works just like a regular menu. And again, a lot of students don't even worry about this until maybe their 3rd or 4th semester of law school, and then they start to focus on it and decide which track they want to follow. And if you do successfully complete the concentration, then you get this letter from me. It's a much longer letter than you see here. and we send it to, students can give it to their employers. And we've had the concentration program now in effect for about 7 or 8 years. So employers now know to look for a letter indicating that the student successfully completed the concentration. Okay, and that's it. I know I talked really fast. My final comment I just want to say, as you can see here, is please contact me with questions. Know that the faculty, that we are here to help you. I was a very shy law school student, and I was always afraid to go talk to my professors, and I would say that was really dumb of me to do. We are very interactive faculty. Please come and talk to us. We are here to help you learn what resources we have, and help you in every way we can. So with that, I am going to now stop sharing. And if anybody wants this, wants a copy of that, I'm happy to share it, but I think you probably get the gist of it. Thank you, May.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. I guess this is Yvonne, and I probably can't be seen, but I can see you all.
Okay.
And we'll go to our next speaker, and that will be Professor Tamara Cunin, Professor of Law and co-director of the Denver Law Clinics. So take it away.
Great, thanks. I'm going to share my screen too. Do that quick. Let's see here. Whoop. Okay, there we go. So my name is Tammy Kennan, and I am one of 2 co-directors of our student law office. And I want to talk a little bit about the student law office in particular. But I want to start off by just talking about what clinical programs are, just to complement something that Professor Schott just said. So when we talk about clinical programs, what we're talking about are programs that involve live clients. So again, it's another kind of experiential learning opportunity. Professor Schott was talking about simulated courses, and these that Professor Freeman and I are going to talk about are clinical or client-based programs. The student law office is a type of clinical program that is run from within the law school itself. So Professor Freeman's going to talk in just a moment about the kinds of client or clinical opportunities that you can gain outside of the law school, and those are in externship and other kinds of field placements. And I'm really going to focus on the student law office, which is kind of a unique thing in the sense that the student law office is actually a fully functioning, fully staffed public interest law office located inside the law school building. So we're on the 3rd floor. And what that means from just a way that that's an interesting, I think, experience for students is that the professors who run the student law office, which consists of 7 different kinds of clinics, all housed within this law office that I'll talk about, are full-time faculty. So these are people who, when we think about the people who direct these different clinics, these are people like myself who not only have a Juris Doctor and have practiced law, but then have also gotten a master's in law in the subject of clinical law teaching. So I think one way to think about how that can be very beneficial to you is to think about the fact that when we run our law office, we are actually first looking for students to accept into our clinical courses. And then we are helping you figure out what kinds of clients you want to represent and how you want to go about representing clients versus other great opportunities outside the law school where you're joining a law office and beginning to learn about the culture of that practice and being supervised by attorneys who already are in some kind of practice. And there just are a lot of great and different benefits to both kinds of experiential clinical opportunities. In the clinic, in the student law office, because you've got a full-time faculty member who's devoted to helping you figure out what kind of attorney you want to be, and really supervising you and supporting you in every aspect of client representation, you're really in the driver's seat. So the idea, the nutshell pedagogy that we live by is trying to put the student in the primary decision-making role. when it comes to a case and a client. And I want to stop and say here, and I think Professor Shah mentioned this too a little bit. If you're like me, when you started law school, when you're in law school, you might be thinking to yourself at this moment, oh my God, that sounds totally terrifying. And why would I ever want to be the primary decision maker or act like the attorney on a case while I'm in law school? And I want to say that I chose my law school specifically for the clinical offerings it had, and yet I found that was when I was in my first year of law school, I wanted to actually put off taking a clinic because I was terrified about the idea of taking on and shouldering that responsibility. And when I reflect on that, and what I want to say to you now is, I really want you to resist letting that fear, I think, which would be a very normal thing to be feeling. Resist letting that fear allow you to procrastinate taking a clinic, because as I think about it, what I really was terrified about was actually practicing law. And had I thought about clinic as an opportunity to do that when someone whose full-time job was with me to help me do that, rather than waiting until I got out of law school, I think that just puts it in perspective.
Professor Tammy, you're staticky, so I don't know where your microphone is, but maybe keep going, or raise your volume a little bit.
Thanks, Yvonne. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for interrupting me. I appreciate it. So the last thing I was just saying is that I just want to encourage you to feel the fear and do it anyway, and think about clinical opportunities while you're in law school. In the student law office, there are several different kinds. There are 7 actually different kinds of clinical opportunities you could think about. And I think some of the titles of our clinics are really sort of self-evident, but I wanted to just say a couple of sentences about each. Criminal defense clinic, maybe that's the most self-evident description of what that clinic does, but I still wanted to say that students in that clinic are representing clients who have been accused of either a misdemeanor or a state ordinance violation. So these are lower level, not felony crimes, lower level kinds of crimes, but all the constitutional bells and whistles and defenses are going to apply. And it's an intensive experience, again, where you are in the driver's seat and you are actually the attorney on the case. Our civil rights clinic is a federal civil litigation clinic. That clinic focuses in the area of the constitutionality of the conditions upon which people are detained in our federal and state prisons. So again, a lot of constitutional litigation going on there. And because it's a clinic that practices in federal court, it's an interesting opportunity if that's something that appeals to you. In our immigration law and policy clinic, this is a really interesting clinic that sort of students represent clients really at the intersection of a civil area of law, which is immigration law, and criminal law, criminal defense law. So students are both in immigration court, helping their representing clients who maybe are being removed or threatened with deportation. And then they're also appearing in criminal court in cases in which immigration might be an issue. So it's a really great intersection of criminal and civil law. The civil litigation clinic is the clinic that I teach, actually. And in this clinic, this is sort of like a traditional legal services model of assisting clients who are very poor in meeting some of their civil needs. So this is a state court practice. It is focusing at the moment on defending tenants who are being evicted from federally subsidized housing. It does a smattering of family law, and in particular, it serves victims of domestic violence. And then we also work in one other area at the moment, and that is representing clients who are very low-income workers who might be independent contractors or might be employees and who simply are not being paid for their labor. So we call that theft of labor. Our environmental law clinic is the other kind of, it's another kind of, I should say, a civil litigation clinic, again, though, that is in federal court. And as its name probably denotes, the students are representing sometimes private citizens, but more often organizations and community nationally, regionally, and tribally, actually, in protecting wildlife spaces and wildlife itself and other natural resources. And then I'm going to go to one more screen that simply categorizes all of our clinics in a different way, just that you can see that some of our clinics are year-long programs, and others are semester-long programs. But I wanted to highlight two that I've not mentioned. One is in the year-long column, our Community Economic Development Clinic. And then the other is in our semester-long, and it's called the Community Innovation Equity Project. And these are two clinics that are not litigation-based, rather transactional-based. So all the clinics I mentioned before these really are based on litigation, and Professor Schott really was talking about litigation as a form of advocacy too. But we also have at DU various opportunities, and these are two great ones, to do transactional work. So in the Community Economic Development Clinic, that's a clinic that represents nonprofits, community organizations, small businesses in the community, and it sort of helps its clients do both business law and meet the legal needs of I guess called the community economic development legal needs. So students in that clinic are drafting articles of incorporation, they're drafting applications for small businesses to, or for nonprofits, I should say, to get tax exempt status, drafting all kinds of contracts and explaining those contracts to their clients and negotiating on their behalf. And similarly, the Community Law Equity Project, in that clinic, students do all of the same kinds of things. So it's a sort of kind of a community economic development clinic, but they really focus on three areas. One is helping develop rural community organizations. Second is advocating for equity and equal representation in technology. And it really is largely about community education for small businesses about their rights and their obligations when it comes to immigration enforcement. So that's a really short nutshell version of what our different clinics offer. And much like Professor Schott mentioned, same with us. You can find lots of information on the websites for each of the clinics, a lot more detail than what I'm providing right now, but I wanted to give you an overview. And lastly, what I wanted to say is that it really doesn't matter which clinic you take. I think Professor Schott said he initially was interested in tax and it ended up being a litigator. I think a great way to think about clinics is simply to think about, or to think about trying out maybe an area of law that you don't intuitively think you are interested in. And the reason I say that is because regardless of which clinic you take, you really can't go wrong in the sense that you really have your own caseload and clients after your second year. We talk here on the slide about how you need to have 30 credits, so you have to do your first year first. But beginning as early as your second year, you can be doing everything that an attorney does because you will be the attorney on the case, like interviewing your client, developing relationships with your clients, doing all kinds of fact investigation, counseling your clients at every turn about pros and cons and risks. And of course, all of that changes throughout the course of a case, creating a legal strategy. And if you're in a litigation clinic, that also means that everything that happens in the courtroom happens because you make it happen. So you're doing all of the talking, opening, closing, direct, cross, all of that stuff with your client sitting next to you and your clinical supervisor sitting close behind you. But really our measure of success is when we don't have to say anything during a court proceeding. So the last thing I'm going to say before I hand it over to Lexi is just that I think all of your courses, of course, will inform and help you and give you the foundation for taking a clinic. But another plug for taking a clinic and any clinical opportunity early is that it really also has the nice benefit of putting all of your other law school classes into context. So for example, if you haven't taken federal courts and you take one of our federal litigation clinics before you take federal courts, it makes everything that you're learning in a book come to life. So there's really a mutually beneficial dynamic that's happening between clinic and traditional doctrinal classes. And I will end there and ask May to take it over after I stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Professor Freeman.
Okay, I wanted to introduce Professor Alexi Freeman. She's Professor of Practice and the Director of Externships and Public Interest Initiatives. And for anyone who has questions, you can be typing them in the chat. And so we can address anything that you've heard. I know we had a little bit of static, Professor Tammy, with your presentation. So we'll have some folks, I'm sure, asking some more questions. Thank you, Professor Freeman.
Okay, I was unmuted. Okay, now I'm unmuted. I was just saying, I was just doing a stretch for a second because I think it's hard to sort of sit in a screen for a while, but it's really exciting. I feel like there's 80 or so people on this, which is awesome. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us via this sort of odd new normal format. Hopefully it won't be the situation when you hopefully join us in the fall. But nevertheless, I'm excited to sort of at least see you all by name and see a few of you by face and work with my colleagues, Professor Schott and Professor Kennan and Yvonne and May, to talk to you a little bit about the practical world at Denver Law. I'm sure our admissions folks have made this very clear. We are very much known for our emphasis on practical learning and experiential learning. And we're really proud of what we do. Professor Kennan didn't mention, even though Professor Schott teed us up, we are ranked number 8 in the clinical education world and 7 by the National Jurist in Practical Training, which I think is a combination of all of our programs. So I don't believe rankings tell a story of everything by any means, but I do think they show that the law school does heavily invest in these areas. And I think that's very much true. And we're really excited to work with you all, because I think a lot of what you, when you figure out sort of how you want a lawyer, who you want to be, how you want to be perceived, how you want to spend your day-to-day, to me, a lot of that, the majority of that is felt and developed by being a part of all of our programs. And we very much believe they all sort of feed into one another as well. So just a 5-second thing about me. I've been at the law school for 7 years and previously was a lawyer at a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. With the exception of one semester in which I did an in-house clinic, so a clinic like Professor Kennan was talking about, I did an externship every single semester. So I'm certainly, I think, well suited to be a good advocate for externships at Denver Law, because I just did a lot of them and got something different out of each of them. They very much helped me figure out my pathway for practice. So like my colleagues, I'm going to share a screen here. Hopefully it will work. Okay, let's see, where's the slideshow? There we go. Oh, my little Zoom, there we go, slideshow. Okay, can everyone see the externships slide? I'm assuming yes, I'm not seeing faces, so let me know if not. First, let me just share a very, very easy, I think, email address to remember if you do have a follow-up question that isn't addressed during my quick talk here, externships@law.du.edu. The one below it is my personal email. You're certainly welcome to email as well, but externships will get forwarded to me as well. So if you have any questions, please contact us through there. So in a nutshell, I want to explain what an externship is first, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what that sort of looks like in the process. One, it's essentially working in the field. So working outside of the law school building, working within a legal office under supervision. It is majority under supervision of a licensed lawyer, but there are some times, whether it's in a policy world, compliance, where you could be working with a non-lawyer who has the appropriate amount of experience, and you work for credit. So the biggest question people will ask is, how is this different than what I would call an internship, right? I mean, it's not really. Legal education has fancy words, so sometimes it will be called an externship, but I think there are a couple of key differences. The key difference of one is that you're getting academic credit. So it's like, instead of taking family law one semester for 3 credits, you're going to take an externship for credit instead. So you're sort of just, at law school, you have to take 90 credits before you graduate, which I know sounds really daunting. 30 of those are taken by your 1L curriculum. After those 30, there's about 10 credits of required courses. Professor Schott had mentioned evidence. But after that, like the world is your oyster. You can really pick. And I think that's 50 credits to choose is both exciting and liberating, especially after 1 year, and also a little overwhelming, right? So one of the things I think that people really like to do is try to think about how can they have experiential work fulfill those 50 credits. Externships is certainly one way. The other thing that I think is different besides the credit is that we sort of ask you to work with intentionality, right? So we ask you to form specific goals, and we ask you to actively reflect on your experience while you're in it. You are doing this via support from myself and colleagues in my department. So you're supported by faculty. Why that matters, I think, sort of multifaceted. One is every supervisor you work with is vetted by our office. They have to go through an application process. We're looking at disciplinary history. We're talking to them. We're trying to figure out where you're going to literally physically sit, what type of work you're going to do. So we try to sort of understand the placement setting as much as possible. We also very much help you find placements at the onset, right? You say, I saw someone on a chat said, I'm interested in technology or privacy law. Yes, we have those things, right? But how do you sort of start to find them? So we sort of talk with you about that search process. Once you're ultimately in the placement, we're advising you. We're helping you troubleshoot. Troubleshoot could be, I don't know how to find this research topic. It could also be, my supervisor's personality and mine seem to be a little bit different. Let's talk about, how we can work through that. We will also try to teach you some behind the curtains aspect of the practice setting that you're in. So billable hours for private sector, other kinds of things that might come up. And we also help you think about what's next. I think one or two of my colleagues mentioned, a lot of these things really do sort of lead onto other things, right? So after you do an externship, you may then be more inspired or less inspired, right, to go on a certain path. So we go through a lot of academic advising with you to try to figure out, well, you know what, this clinic might be a really good fit, or I think you should try this class, or let's go to this podium class to make sure you think employment law is what you want to do. I want to give you a sense of sort of the expansiveness of our program. I think potentially only second to maybe Georgetown, and I think that just depends on the day. We are the largest externship program in the country, and certainly the largest program within our world at Denver Law. So we have 576 externships last academic year. When I talk about last academic year, I'm talking about 2018 to 2019, and that's because we do fall, spring, summer. Externships can be year-round, and the majority, the largest number is in the summer. So it'll be for the day student, it's after your 1 year. For the part-time student, in case any folks are in that program here, you wouldn't start till spring after 1.5 years. But nevertheless, the most people get their sort of first touch at experiential learning via that 1L summer externship. 576 externships means generally around 400 students. We have repeaters, right? Some students will do an externship in the summer and then do another one in the spring, something like that. We worked last academic year with over 350 supervisors. Most are in Colorado. That's simply because a lot of people come to our state and never want to leave. However, it's important to note that especially in the summer, you are allowed to leave, to go home to a home state, to go to New York City because you wanted to work there, wherever it may be. As long as supervisors, our process, you may work out of state and even out of country. Students logged over $140,000, that would be nice if you got $140,000 from your externship. No, 140,000 hours were worked. So people are really contributing a lot with their work. And I should also mention that 91% of graduates do at least one externship. And we are very much a repeat customer program. And I think that's because once you get a bite at the apple of practical learning, you like to do it again, right? We very much promote all of the experiential opportunities. And again, they very much lead onto each other. But someone might do a civil litigation clinic right in the fall and then say, gosh, I got really interested in domestic violence work because that's a component of what they do. So now in the spring, I'm going to go work at Project Safeguard, a nonprofit, and then we'll wait. I want to see now how this could look family law in a firm. So now I'm going to do that this summer, right? So you can try a bunch of different areas within the same subject area, or you can sort of touch a bunch of different things because you want to explore. That's why we have a lot of repeat customers. We also very much promote, as evidenced by the example that I just shared, a lot of diverse settings. So we are some law schools are limited in the types of externships you can do. We are not one, and I think that's great because while my personal pathway has been within the public interest, I think it's really important to help students understand what the settings look like, how settings might feel, right? How different sort of values are felt in different settings. And I don't think you do that unless you actually get to work in the space that you want to work. We want to become ethical, good lawyers regardless of where you want to work. So we allow public and private settings. This last academic year, 46% of the placements that students worked in, not of the placements available, were private. So that means corporate, which is like a general counsel's office, or a private firm. There's great diversity within a private firm. This could be a solo practitioner, a mid-size, a small firm, plaintiff side, big law, right? There's just huge diversity there. 40% were public, and I'm defining this as government or nonprofit. Government can be public defender, district attorney, federal government agency. We have the most federal government agencies besides DC in one geographic area. It's huge. Regardless of what you think about current administration or past administration, experience is really valuable in these regional offices, state government agencies, et cetera, local city attorney. And nonprofits can be either small nonprofit that does direct services, it can be legal aid, it can be an ACLU, it can be a hospital, right? Those would all be sort of nonprofits. And then we pull out judicial, even though of course it is technically public just because it's sort of its own world. So 14% were in judicial chambers. And again, great diversity, federal magistrate, state trial district, now of course I'm blanking on most of the things, state appellate court, right? Probate, domestic docket, criminal docket, a whole big range. I already mentioned the out of state. So what are you doing in these settings? I just went through I gave a couple bullet points about what students have done in these settings. We have students drafting amicus briefs. We have students drafting legislation, right? Because you can also work at the Capitol or lobbying groups, things like that. We have students with, I think Professor Schott mentioned this, actually like running dockets, right? Being in, once you are have 60 credits, you can actually work in court, right? So we have people doing this on the defense and prosecution sides. We have people working in judicial chambers, actually writing orders. We have people delivering presentations at immigration detention centers. People creating standards for hemp law. Cannabis and hemp, super growing in this area. We have a lot of placements, most private, but some in public as well, in that space. Family law mediations, immigrants at asylum hearings, writing contracts for general counsels, drafting litigation documents for clients on death row. These are all things that our students did, and this is of course a very, very, very truncated list and doesn't include the of course you're writing a legal memo and of course you're doing intake and all of that. We also, and I'm gonna go through this very quickly, we do run during different semesters some specialty programs. Our semester in practice is one of our most sort of well-known. 3Ls can work full-time for a whole 14-week semester in the fall or spring at a placement for credit in-state or out-of-state. This semester I actually had 4 people who were out-of-state and another 5 who were in-state. Usually it's about 20 to 25 students per year that run in this program. Not something you have to worry about yet, but if you're someone who really likes practical learning, it would be something to come talk to me about in your 2L year. We have a specialty cannabis program in which we recruit certain placements at certain times, child advocacy, so child welfare work, corporate, and some diversity-based programs as well. I wanted just to mention sort of why I think an externship is particularly valuable, and then I want to mention a little bit about the application process since I saw that question come up with clinics and thought it could come up here. One, it simulates real life learning. So there is a lack of control. That is both terrifying and wonderful, right? You will see how a legal office functions day to day, what the attorneys do, and what they need sort of their junior folks to do. You are sort of often treated like you are a junior associate, a junior deputy, whatever the title may be. It will give you a variety of actual skill development, right? So the tangibles, when I say that, I mean like the research, the writing, policy, right? But also the intangible stuff in terms of like your work ethic and how you manage your time and how you respond to communication, whether it be oral or whether it be over email, those sorts of things, which end up being what employers actually say are the most important skills to develop. I don't think you really develop those until you're actually in a legal office doing these things. Development of your professional identity. I'm sure many of you have heard this term, but it's sort of the legal profession's term for like figuring out who it is you want to be and how you want to be perceived and how you want your role as a lawyer to look. Relationship building with practitioners in the field. Professor Schott mentioned alumni in his program, and they are very much in his program. They're also very much involved in our program. The Denver legal community, and I was sort of expansively, Metro Denver area is super invested in our externship program. We have a database of over 600 placements, and the majority are in Metro Denver. People really like, I don't want to say rely, but they rely on student work and informing these relationships, and they hire based on that as well, right? So you really get to know people, which can lead to employment and also just can lead to mentorship and relationships. We also hope it gives you sort of lifelong skills around goal setting and reflective practice, both of which we know are critical to sustaining yourself in a healthy, balanced way. I also went through and looked a little bit about what students say, because I'm sure you care more about what our students say about why they choose externship. And these are the themes that came out. Inspiring. I think some one-off classes and lectures are really inspiring, but I think seeing attorneys do the work, working with clients, seeing what the law can do is really inspiring and motivating. Grounding and centering. Sometimes you feel like some classes don't give you context, right? They don't tell you sort of how the law fits in with a broader vision, with your value system, with like how society functions. Externships help do that. Confidence, this is huge. Many people will think, I don't think I can be a lawyer, or I didn't do as well as I hoped in this class, and that means I'm going to struggle. And that's not true, right? Classes measure one way of learning, and I think externships, clinics, trial ad, etc., they really help you build confidence and show you that you can in fact do things. The reality of practice, like how things actually function, it's really important to see. You may think you want to be a litigator, and then you go to a litigation firm, and you say, you know what, actually, no, I don't like this adversarial nature. You don't really know these things until you try them out. Practical skills I've mentioned. Stimulating and intellectually challenging. People give you work that they need, where people are not writing memos to file, right? So there are going to be new issues. They could be novel issues to the firm, and there's certainly going to be novel issues to you. And I think that's quite invigorating. If you know what you want to do, it can give you really great exposure. You know, you could want to do child welfare work and experience that in an education setting, experience that with a guardian ad litem, experience that with the city agency human services division, right? There's a million ways you could experience that, and externships allow you to touch different ways. Also, if you're not really sure what you want, or if you just want to explore new things, you can, try on a bunch of different things for size. Externships make you really marketable. It is very rare now, I think, for an employer to want to see just one clinic or just one externship, et cetera. They want to see multiple opportunities. Because we allow these things in 3 different semesters, you can really get a lot of tangible experience. And then this, going back to this professional identity, I think this might be the most important thing. How you want a lawyer, who you want to be. And I think they're also really fun. One day might be a little bit stressful, but generally I think it shows you really about what the law looks like in practice. I should mention just briefly, I mentioned this database that we have. We go through a sort of vetting process, and once the attorney has been vetted by us, they are then in our database until they tell us not to be. So the way students search for externships is primarily using this database that you will have access to as a student. When you search through it, you can filter by practice area, geographic, practice setting, so nonprofit, firm, et cetera, family law, employment law, et cetera. And that really helps you narrow down, because 600 is quite daunting, but the filtering is key. We also meet one-on-one with students, as I mentioned, very regularly to try to help you figure out what to do. Then you apply to an externship like you apply to a job. So you're not applying to me or my colleague, you're submitting outwardly, and then once you secure a position, we work with you to get you registered and all of that. I also wanted to note one thing about our program is that I've been mentioning that you can do 3 semesters worth of externships. You have 6 semesters of law school choice, right? After your first year, you have fall, spring 2L year, fall, spring 3L year, and then 2 summers, right? So that's 4 semesters. Excuse me, I did that wrong. Am I doing this? No, 6 semesters. I've lost it. I'm working and parenting 2 small children is not easy. I'm sorry. So you have 6 semesters of choice, right? So what Denver law allows, I think, and if you look, sort of the devil is in the details, if you looked at other law schools, is we allow a lot of credits to be used towards clinics and externships and simulation classes. So law schools have limits on these things. We are quite expansive so that you do get the opportunity to try these things. The other thing is we allow a lot more credits per externship, right? So you may not want to just work 7 hours a week, right? You might say, this is really my jam. This is where I want to be. I want to work 15 hours a week here. Great, like we allow you to use more credit per placement. So I'd encourage you, those of you who are still sort of making decisions, which totally makes sense, this is a really important decision to make, experiential learning really speaks to you. I would encourage you to get in the weeds a little bit about things like credits and things like hours, because they can really affect how much time you can devote to all of these opportunities, all of which I think could really help you figure out the type of lawyer that you want to be. So I think for there, I will stop and I will attempt to stop sharing my screen and let's see if May or Yvonne wants to take it away with questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. We have a lot of questions. So we're going to start, May is going to start with the ones as they were written, and we will address them. And if we can be short to the point so we can keep moving. Go ahead, May.
All right. So I think this first question here is for David. David, would you say that most students get involved in the competition programs with the Center for Advocacy?
I can tell you that we have about 120 students a year are on the teams, and we have about 175 or 176 students a year that compete in tournaments.
Great. And let's see, can you, and this could be for the whole panel, or if one person wants to kind of take on, I know that Lexi addressed this a little bit, as well as Tammy. Can you speak to opportunities for students who are interested in public interest, just in general?
I can take that first, Professor Kennan, if that's okay, because of the dual hat I wear around public interest. So I think our old nickname used to be like the Public Interest School of the Rockies, or something a little bit pithier than that. But very much we are a law school. Our mission is to be dedicated to the private university dedicated to the public good. And I think that really does play true in a variety of ways. The clinics, of course, inherently are social justice-based clinics with who they serve. Externships, I think I gave an idea of at least sort of the broad scope of public sector-based externships that we do allow. But we also have these other interesting, like, practicum courses. We have seminars that sort of do deep dives on public interest sort of theory and practice. So I think, and there's also, you know, student organizations that run a variety of things. So I think there are a lot of ways to sort of, whether you want to just be someone who does pro bono work, which is very valuable, or be a full-fledged public interest lawyer, you know, all day, all the time. There's plentiful opportunities both in the classroom and in experience.
Great, thank you. How competitive do you think that these programs are for students to be involved in?
I'll start there, but I want to make sure people can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So clinics are a little bit competitive, but not ultra uber competitive. So we have a process where students fill out a short application and then they're interviewed by faculty. And I would say we on average have about 90 students per year. So it might be a little bit more competitive than some of the other clinical opportunities out there, but it's not crazy competitive. Lexi, anything to add?
So we can find an externship for everyone, right? If you would like to work at the Colorado Supreme Court as a 1L, that may be a little harder, right? I think there are some where some prerequisites are valuable, right? Or some additional experience, but certainly there's an externship for every student who wants one.
And for the teams and the competitions are wide open. Anyone can participate in those. And the teams are very competitive. However, I've always said that I don't know many students who want to be on a team that don't find a team. It might not be their number one choice. Maybe they want to be on the football arbitration team and they end up being on the baseball mediation team, or I'm sorry, baseball arbitration, football mediation, that sort of thing. But everybody finds a team, or if they want to be on one.
Okay, thank you. Question, David, probably for you. For someone as of now interested in going into technology and privacy law and not public interest, would you still find it beneficial to take some of the trial advocacy courses?
Absolutely. And that kind of goes back to those first series of numbers that I provided. The 63% of our graduates find themselves in some sort of litigation-related job. Sometimes sometimes areas of law that you would think would be the least litigation-oriented, you're going to find yourself in some sort of adversarial hearing, or, and by that I mean, oppositional hearing and things like that. So I think it's great to always have basic litigation and trial skills in your back pocket.
Thank you. Tammy, you mentioned that clinics is somewhat competitive. How are students selected for participation in clinics?
I think I just covered that. I saw the questions too. So there's a very short application that's filled out. It's filled out online. Couple different times of year, there's an opportunity to fill that out. And then the faculty actually interview all of the students who apply.
Thank you. I think I have one more here. Are you eligible to do more than one clinic?
Yes, absolutely. So I think what you're looking at generally with all of the clinical educational opportunities and not just clinical, also simulated, is you're going to be looking at how many credits you are allowed, I should say, to take outside of the classroom. And I believe, but I know that David or Lexi will correct me, that it's 30. Is it a little bit less than that though?
25.
25, okay. So it's a pretty substantial number of credits overall that you can take that are outside of the classroom. In the clinics, there's both there is an in-class component that I think is worth about 4 credits for most clinics, and that's each semester. And then also each semester, the out of the field work portion, the client representation, is 5 credits. So of 9 credits total, 5 of those are out of the classroom. And with every experiential opportunity that you're capitalizing on, you're just thinking about what that maximum number is that you can hit.
Thank you.
So this can be a question for one or all of you. If you don't know what kind of law you want to go into, would you recommend taking a variety of classes in different areas in a semester, or maybe going a different direction and picking an area that seems interesting and then taking multiple classes in that particular field to see if that's a good choice for you?
I said one thing about this. I think all of us have said something about this, which is I think it's a great idea to try out as much as you possibly can. And I also want to just tweak that question a little bit and say that I thought for sure I did not want to do anything criminal. And that's true. I've done civil litigation my entire clinic. Boy, do I wish I had some criminal experiential component. I'm constantly having to ask colleagues in the community for the most basic information. And the truth is that so many areas of law intersect that I just don't think you can go wrong trying out a lot of stuff.
I'm going to echo that sentiment 100%. Just cast a wide net early in your career when you're going into that first semester, that first summer after your 1L year, when you're a rising 2L, grab an externship. And I've had students go from one end of the spectrum to the other, but I think it sort of evolves organically. When you cast that wide net, you start to identify what you like and what you don't like. Do I like being in a courtroom, or do I like drafting, documents? And it'll evolve organically and sort of narrow for you then.
Great. Can we discuss a little bit more? I think the mic was cutting out a little bit. The environmental law clinic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. So I'm at home like we all are, and I don't have a lot of technical expertise. I can see that my speaker is having issues, but I think I'm getting enough nods that, okay, so let me go back to the environmental law clinic. So the environmental law clinic represents largely organizations and not individual citizens, but sometimes individual citizens. But it's mostly organizations in the community, like Sierra Club comes to mind. But it can be national, regional, local, or tribal organizations that have some kind of standing to pursue some kind of environmental issue. So this is generally around preservation of wildlife, wild spaces, natural resources, including water, prevention of pollution, and they also do some equity, so what we would call environmental justice kinds of work. So making sure that that every group of people has equal access to the same resources that the rest of us do, and that some groups of people aren't always stuck living next to a pollution site or something like that. So there's both the substantive environmental law that they're doing by representing agencies, and then also this environmental justice kind of overlay.
Thank you. The next questions, I'm going to combine the 3 into one, and they're regarding externships, but we could also say how this works out with clinic. Can you be in the same externship for multiple semesters or in the same clinics? Do externships become summer internships? And how vital is it to have an externship right after the first year of law school?
Okay, so I'll go first, and then Professor Kennan, if you want to jump in on the clinic piece, feel free. So can you extern at the same place more than once? The answer is yes. The threshold for like a second time is pretty easy. The supervisor just has to basically send us an email and explain how the work will be enhanced. I think that's a very doable thing. Sometimes when students want to stay at the same placement for like a third time, that becomes a little bit more of a thoughtful, in-depth conversation. It's not a definite no, but it's an individualized thing. We do also have people who will sometimes switch. They'll switch from I was in transaction, now I'm going to litigation. Or I worked in the juvenile unit and now I'm going to be in county court. Those are all things that count sort of new, right? Because they are inherently very new. So the short answer is yes, but there's layers, right, to that. Tammy, if it's okay, I'll just keep going and then jump back to you.
It's going to be the same for clinics. Go ahead.
So I'm going to take the how vital is it to do something after your 1L year first. In the world of coronavirus, vital takes on a very different term, right? So, we will all be fine with a number of choices that we make, right? And we need to make choices that are best for you, your family, your life, financial reasons, all these different things, right? With that said, I think that doing some sort of experiential learning work, which is mainly through externships in your 1L summer, is very valuable. One, I think most people really like it because they've been in the classroom and finally they get to do something not in the classroom. And two, it really allows you to hone some of the initial skills that you've learned. It allows you to I took nothing in environmental law and now I finally get to do something in environmental law, right, in the summer. So I think most people, I think the last 3 years we've had 250 people working for academic credit every summer. And there are some people who choose to work not for credit, right? And that's fine too, but just getting that experience I think is really valuable. I'm not sure if I totally understand the question. Do externships become summer internships? So I think what I'll reframe a little bit in that an externship essentially is a summer internship. It's just working for credit, right? Another question I thought I saw, and I'll answer that now too, is can you also get paid simultaneously? And at Denver Law, you can, right? At every school, you cannot. So that would be a question to ask. So in our position, if you could get a paid position and say, I also want to get credit for it. If they're not in our database, you come to us, you get you situated, right? You can be getting both. You could also find an externship in our database and they could then say to you, oh, we're also willing to pay. That's also a possibility. Every semester, it's about 20 to 30% of externship placements are paid. I like to share that because I think people sometimes think everyone's getting paid and I'm not, and it's actually not the case. We like people to think about the idea of you're paying for torts, you're paying for the experience, right? Like an externship is like a class. It's just a different type of class.
May, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I've got kind of combining some questions again. So I think I'm interpreting a question of, are there externships available for part-time students in addition to full-time students? And then can you kind of speak to some best practices for fitting in externships into a part-time study and a full-time work schedule? And as I kind of jumping off that one as well, is it feasible for students to be able to really think about doing all of these things? So having a practical experience, working and studying law school part-time as well.
So I'll go first, and then the two of you, if you want to jump in on the last question, that'd be great. So I'll take the part-time in two ways. One is if you are in our part-time program, can you do an externship once you're eligible? Yes. A variety of ways. Some of them are working in an office that has a legal department, so they'll do some legal work. Some of them will have some flexibility and won't have to go into their office every day, so they can do an externship on those days off. Other people will use, an hour, 2 hours of vacation time a week, right, to sort of hours in. We are, really open to students who are in the part-time program. We understand that it's very challenging to do experiential work. We allow remote work much more often in those situations. Again, virus aside, we would absolutely talk with you if you were a part-time student who wanted to do an externship, and we do have students who do that. I think another question related to that is, are there part-time externships or are they all full-time? And the answer is absolutely. There are part-time externships in the summers, particularly for people who have just finished their 1L year. And I say go for it if you can. Give yourself a little bit of a breathing room, because 2L summer, it's much less common. And certainly during the year, during fall and spring, 95% of externships are going to be part-time, right? Because you are likely also taking a class. Is it feasible to do an externship while also taking classes? If you're not, I think what you're doing is you're subbing, right? So if a full-time course load is 15 credits, I don't recommend you take 15 credits and either, work without credit on top of that, if you don't have to, right? Or do 15 credits and then try to overload. No, what I would suggest is build in within your 15 credits, you're building in an externship, right? As 4 of those credits instead of a class, or you're building in a clinic as 7 of those credits, whatever it may be, right? If you also have to, if your externship is unpaid, or your clinics, which are all unpaid, and you need some sort of income, which I know is very hard for many law students, there are some students who will do some work for pay outside of the law school world. I think it's hard to juggle it all. I think we would all acknowledge that. But I think with planning, it can be, but I think you want to think about, which classes, right, you're taking while you're also doing an externship, while you're also doing a simulation class. And I think that's just an individual conversation that, if and when you join us or after this, if you wanted to talk to someone about your particular situation, we could talk about what things might make sense, because I think it's hard to do like a simulation-based class that has a lot of assignments plus an externship plus a job, plus, I mean, there's a point when I think you have to make some choices, but I think the thing is the law school journey is long enough that I think you can touch all these things, even if you're not touching all of them at the exact same time. Like, we don't allow clinics and externships at the same time for this very reason, right? So hopefully that answers the question, at least to some extent, but I don't know, Tammy or David, if you want to jump in.
I don't know if we have time, so let me defer to May.
Well, it's 4:02, but if folks want to stay another 3 minutes, let's do it. I have nowhere to go. Okay, go ahead.
David, do you want to jump in?
So with regard to the part-time program, in this coming academic year, we will be offering the trial advocacy courses in the part-time program. Just another dynamic, this comes up a lot. Most of the teams are available to take those for credit if you want them as well. And then, of course, all of our courses are accredited. None of the tournaments are accredited, though. I don't know if that comes close to answering any of those questions, but I was trying to mirror a little bit what Lexi talked about.
The only thing I would add to this is that we also all really appreciate how individual of a question this can be, decision, I guess. And that really very, very early on in your 1L year, you're gonna be able to access a lot of very individual advice from many faculty. And I know that all three of us would encourage anyone who has questions following up from this to email us as just one example. But I do think these are hard. I think that aside from extremes, these are kind of hard decisions to answer. You might have to work, like Lexi said, you might be someone who works really much more efficiently when you have a lot on your plate. That might also be the opposite for somebody else. And so all of that stuff can be talked over with anybody at any time. And I want to say one more thing, which just is, I'm realizing as we talk here, that on day one of law school, I remember being in my very first class and thinking, I don't feel like people are speaking English to me right now. And, part of what you learn when you go to law school is, and I've just noticed all three of us doing this, just learning this new language and this new culture. So I just wanted to say to everybody, if there are things you did not understand, that doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. And that everybody felt that way. And we try to not speak a foreign language, but I think sometimes we do. And I just wanted to tell you, that's fine. It's normal if you feel that way.
Okay, I'm going to try to mix 3 questions. With academic advising and clinic externship selections, is there a process of matching based on people's skills, experience, and personality? That's one of the questions. Another is, how are mentors and mentees matched? And then what are the requirements, prerequisites for the child advocacy specialty externship?
So I guess I touched on that just a little bit. I do think that people are matched in a sense, in the sense that you can get individual advising from very early on. We have amazing faculty doing that kind of work. There's not like a formal matching process that I know of, at least not in the clinics. It's really a much more general sort of interview process. I'm going to answer the last question and then let David or Lexi answer the middle one. For the child advocacy practicum, that's something that's done through Rocky Mountain Children's Law Center. I know that practicum very well.
It's through us now, Tammy.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, because it's broader than RMCLC now.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but it's evolved a little bit. So I'll touch Child Ed. Child Ed program now, students are applying now to work in the fall. It has a 2-credit specialty course that's taught by a lawyer at the Rocky Mountain Children's Law Center, which Professor Kennan just referenced. But the placements that you work at are broad. It could be the Rocky Mountain Children's Law Center. It could be a human services city agency. It could be a juvenile defense attorney. It's a variety of places. And I'm happy to send whoever that is, if you want to email me the the description of what the placements that are participating this year. There are generally no prereqs, with the exception of those who are in court. You have to have 60 credits. So maybe 2 of the 10 placements, right, have that option. But otherwise, it's sort of, you just apply to this program, and then hopefully you get matched with one of those places. In terms of the matching, I'll just echo Professor Kennan on the advising. The externship program we really take great pride in knowing the placements. So in addition to saying, okay, great, you're interested in family law, here's the 20 family law firms I'd recommend, we also try to find out like how you work best, because each of those family law firms functions differently, right? So we try to really learn those placements and then give you advice based on that. We also get anonymous evaluations from all students who complete externships, so you can review those and get insight from students, say this attorney does this way, that, so you can get a sense of kind of how the offices work. And then the mentor-mentee program, I will just say that I think you might be referring to the professional mentor program, which Yvonne or may have additional information on. But David, do you want to add anything else?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I'm good. I think you two covered it well. Thank you.
Right. Were there any other questions? I put the names and the email addresses of the professors for everyone. Is that it?
Let's see.
Yeah.
I think there was one other question that I see
Great.
here, and just kind of is there a practical experience track for those of us who want to focus on getting more experience in appellate courts?
Great.
I'll start with that and then let people chime in. And then I'm going to have to I just want to say to our organizers and everybody, I actually have to leave after this question. But thank you for these great questions. So there's in the clinics, first of all, there's a lot of appellate opportunity in the sense that both the environmental law clinic and the civil rights clinic are 2 federal court litigation clinics that just happen to do a lot of appellate. Almost all of their work is appellate. We also, though, haven't talked about a different kind of opportunity, experiential opportunity, and probably there could be another session on this. And that is that there are a lot of other opportunities that are called practicums, and they go by other names too. I know that we have an appellate advocacy practicum, for example, right now that's offered at DU that just doesn't happen to be housed within our student law office at the moment. And then I'm sure we have just a ton of externship opportunities. And I think Lexi might have mentioned some.
Yeah, we have, so appellate courts, certainly you can work as like sort of like an extern in the appellate court. We also have like appellate DA, district attorney, appellate public defender. We have private firms who do appellate litigation. So, there's a variety of ways, and we have one of our filters is appellate advocacy in our database. So we'll be able to talk to you about that.
Yeah, just to echo what's already been said, there are a number of appellate courses. We have appellate teams. So I'm not aware if there is an appellate-based certificate program in the school per se. I think most of them you'll find are dedicated to particular like environmental law, things like that.
Okay, we want to thank everyone for going above and beyond the call of duty. Thank you all, Professor Schott, Kennan, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Tammy, and Professor Freeman. Thank you, May. And thanks to all of you who participated. Email us if you have questions, and be safe out there.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. It's greatly appreciated.
Good luck, everyone.